The rate of active cases in First Nations communities in Canada has decreased by more than 50% over the past 3 weeks.
Tonight, numbers dropping. The spread of COVID-19 is getting lower in First Nations communities, but it will be a while yet before things are back to normal.
We hope Manitou Abe Aki also helps in a small way move forward the truth and reconciliation calls to actions in classrooms here in Manitoba and in Canada.
And a school board in Manitoba is using the game Minecraft to get students to learn about their history. Good evening, welcome to APTN National News. I'm Melissa Ridgen. Indigenous Services Canada confirms that COVID-19 cases are continuing to drop in First Nations communities. But as Jamie Pashagumskum reports, with limited vaccines in Canada, some communities are just going to have to hold on.
The numbers have spoken. The second wave is subsiding.
We are continuing to see positive signs that the curve is beginning to bend. The rate of active cases in First Nations communities in Canada has decreased by more than 50% over the past 3 weeks.
And there's optimism. The wave will continue to shrink. Vaccinations are now underway in 340 Indigenous communities, but there's still much concern variants of the virus will pose a new threat.
And of course, your next question, maybe, well, we have heard that, some of the vaccines may not actually work as well against the variants. However, there are current vaccines that actually have evidence that it is effective against the new variants. The higher the uptake of the vaccine, the more protection we can offer to communities in the coming months.
With limited vaccines coming to Canada this month, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said this could delay vaccines for southern and urban Indigenous people.
More proximate communities that, while they display essentially the same type of vulnerability by virtue of the fact that they lie a little closer to an urban center, don't have that larger access to the vaccines. That's a sort of a function of, it's a function of the limited global undersupply, but the limited supply under Q1 in Canada now.
As a result, Indigenous Services said many Indigenous communities will have to double down efforts and hold on for the next few weeks or months until the Pfizer vaccine becomes available to them. Jamie Pashagumskum, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Quebec government hasn't come around to adopting what's being called Joyces Principle, an Atikamekw-authored plan that's meant to improve healthcare services for First Nations and Inuit in that province. But the federal government likes it and has kicked in $2 million to help the Atikamekw Nation continue to develop it. The plan is named for Joyce Echaquan, who live-streamed caregivers making racist remarks in a Joliet hospital in late September, shortly before she died. This past fall, Quebec refused to adopt Joyce's Principle because it calls for government recognition of systemic racism. During today's announcement, Indigenous Services Minister Mark Miller said he hopes the Atikamekw will use the funds to continue advocating for Joyce's Principle while working with partners.
I would hasten to say that Joyce's Principle, which was proposed and adopted by the people of Manawan, is one that is not squarely focused on the government of Quebec. It is focused on achieving substantive equality for Indigenous peoples in their interactions with the healthcare system that does have a federal component, in addition to the role of any person in leadership to decry and call out racism wherever they see it and to recognize systemic racism.
A Nunavut judge has issued a limited temporary injunction against Nunavut protesters who have shut down the Mary River iron ore mine for 7 days now. The injunction calls on protesters to allow access to the runway and road to allow staff to leave the mine site, which is accessible only by air. Protesters said there was no need for the order since they had already agreed to do just that. The injunction is temporary and both parties will be back in court on Saturday morning. A spokesperson for the protesters says they will leave when Inuit traditional knowledge is followed.
For the action to be done and to be clarified of what or when Inuit Karimayutukani will be used, that we Inuit and Nunavut were it's our land. We have a say to.
APTN News has obtained information about the days leading up to violence that surrounded the Mi'kmaq moderate livelihood fishery that grabbed international headlines last fall. According to government documents, bureaucrats were warned of the potential for violence by angry non-Indigenous lobster fishers, but instead focused on what the Mi'kmaq lobster harvesters were up to. Reporter Brett Forrester broke this story on aptnnews.ca this morning. He joins me from Ottawa now. So, Brett, tell us about the records that you obtained. How did the government know about the potential for violence when Mi'kmaq harvesters launched their moderate livelihood fishery?
Well, they got an early warning in the form of a letter from Sabaganagati Chief Mike Sack on September 11th. That is, he specifically warned RCMP and DFO about an impending protest that was scheduled for September 15th. He was worried that this protest could potentially turn violent, and he called on both of those agencies to protect the Mi'kmaq fishers. Of course, the DFO did not need Mike Sack for that info. The DFO has an internal law enforcement agency called Conservation and Protection. It's commonly abbreviated as C&P. And within C&P, there's a National Fisheries Intelligence Service. And this National Fisheries Intelligence Service was closely monitoring the situation. They were closely monitoring the protest activity of the industrial fishers, and prior to the September 15th protest, they knew the itinerary, they knew everything about this planned protest right down to the key spokespeople. And so the following day, on September 16th, this was the day before the launch of the moderate livelihood fishery, a fishery intelligence officer submitted a briefing email to their superiors, and this briefing email warned that there was what they called a counter-protest scheduled for September 17th. They warned that commercial fishermen were planning to haul all the gear out of St. Mary's Bay that the Mi'kmaq people set there. So they were aware of impending vigilante violence, and yet it's not clear that they did anything to intervene.
So, like, how unprepared were they? If they knew all of this, and then we saw how it all unfolded, is there any reason why there was no action? Or were they unprepared?
Well, the short answer is that it doesn't appear that they actioned on this intelligence. So there was a bit of jurisdictional wrangling that was happening behind the scenes. And of course, on September 17th, the livelihood fishery launched at about noon. And we saw throughout the day a pretty chaotic scene unfolding. You know, at night there was flares shooting, a floating blockade that had encircled the Mi'kmaq fishers. The following days there was boat ramming, chasing, harassment and fighting on the wharf. And of course, all of that led to mob violence and arson about a month later. And even casual observers pointed at the time that there was virtually no law enforcement present. And there was, of course, minimal RCMP presence on land, and they took a lot of criticism for that. And these documents can show how that came about. So for one example, here is a situation report from September 18th, dated 5 p.m. that we can show you. And it revealed how dire that situation was. According to this document, there was 200 vessels in St. Mary's Bay at that time, with more arriving. Meanwhile, Mi'kmaq fishers were heading down to the wharf to set their traps, but the RCMP had only one boat, which was a ridged hull inflatable vessel, a Zodiac boat. Several Coast Guard ships were in transit. They had been activated the day before, but they hadn't arrived yet. Meanwhile, DFO fishery officers had been issued an operational directive to observe, record, and report. They had essentially been stood down by their superiors, who believed that it was just too risky to go out there and enforce the Fisheries Act. And so what happened is what you saw, that there was a great deal of chaos on the seas, and no rule of law of any kind that was being upheld.
So what was the government's response in the documents that you have, the government's response to all of this happening?
Well, there were two types of responses. There was a law enforcement operational response and then a policy response that was being undertaken at the same time by bureaucrats. So on the law enforcement side, by September 19th, the Marine Security Establishment was firing on all cylinders. The Coast Guard had arrived by September 19th. There was aircraft there. They were monitoring, but there was still a bit of confusion about who was going to enforce what laws against whom. Throughout this entire thing, internal DFO briefing reports, known as situation reports, indicated that they viewed the Mi'kmaq livelihood fishery as itself a form of protest. Prior to its launch, they were planning planning on ramping up engagement activities against the Mi'kmaq. So at no point did they actually consider protecting them. They viewed this livelihood fishery as unauthorized, contrary to the Fisheries Act, and subject to enforcement. And the RCMP, in an internal document, stated that they viewed wharf access as a DFO matter, whereas DFO stated that they viewed, harassment and violence as an RCMP matter. So there was a bit of jurisdictional confusion on the ground.
Well, we're going to have to wrap it up. There are lots more that people can get the details of on our website, aptnnews.ca. Thanks so much, Brett, for joining us. We look forward to the fallout from this. Great work. We need to take a break, but still ahead, allegations of a mushroom mistreated in a Saskatchewan fabric store while buying fabric for ceremony. Stay with us. Welcome back. A social media post about an elder being mistreated at a Saskatchewan fabric store has received a lot of online attention. Here's our Saskatchewan reporter Priscilla Wolf with why.
Cheyenne Sapp posted on Facebook about an incident at a Fabricland store in North Battleford involving her 89-year-old Mushum, Simon Sapp, from the Little Pine First Nation.
He facilitates ceremonies, so he holds a Sundance ceremony out in Little Pine. And he went into Fabricland to get materials for this ceremony.
Sapp says the problems began when he placed an order with a staff member.
He asked her for 7 meters of 4 different colors. And these are specific instructions that were given to her, but she suggested something different to him. She said, well, why don't you get this one instead, or this one, and not realizing that it was for ceremonial purposes. She began to get rude with him after that. He turned down her suggestion. She began to speak to him in a condescending tone. And after every cut, she would look at him and say, 7 meters. She held it up, 7 meters. Are you sure? 7 meters. And every time he responded with yes.
She says Simon was getting uncomfortable with the treatment.
He walked away from her to go and sit down at a bench near the front entrance of the store, still inside the store. But he was well over the 6-foot social distancing rule.
Once he walked away, the staff member confronted him.
She followed him and continued to berate him, telling him, if you're going to take your mask off, you have to leave the store. And she continued this. He didn't remove his mask. He wasn't engaging with her or speaking back to her, but she did follow him all the way to the bench.
Sapp says Simon often shops at the store, and he hadn't had issues before, but this time he had enough.
Finally, after he was tired of being yelled at and spoken to with disrespect, he did get up and he left the store.
The manager of Fabricland did not want to be interviewed, but did release this written statement. This very sensitive matter is of a private nature between myself as a store manager, the Sapp family, and my employee that is involved. I have been in contact directly with the Sapp family and have given them a sincere letter of apology. Cheyenne says that she did receive that apology and was told by the manager that the staff member was suspended for 3 days. But she says she wants to sit down with the staff member at the store to talk about the incident so it doesn't happen to other customers. Until this happens, the family says they won't be going to Fabricland again. Priscilla Wolf, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The Louis Riel School Division in Winnipeg is using the game Minecraft to teach students about Manitoba Anishinaabe culture. Our reporter Daryl Stranger has more on the Minecraft world of Manitowabiaki.
It's a first-of-its-kind education tool, using a unique version of the game Minecraft to show Anishinaabe culture to students. Students enter the virtual world of Manitowabiaki, meaning the place where the creator sits, to learn and explore Manitoba's Anishinaabe community.
We hope Manitowabiaki also helps in a small way move forward the truth and reconciliation calls to actions in classrooms here in Manitoba and in Canada.
Students learn teachings about tobacco, navigating directions using the sun, moon, and stars, and eventually take a canoe ride to where they set up a community and take part in a bison hunt.
It has been really fun for me. I've played Minecraft my whole life, and it's fun to test something new and something exciting that they can develop into the game. It was really interesting to learn about all of their teachings and things I didn't know before. My favorite part is just being able to run around and be guided through what life was like for the Anishinaabe people.
The school division sought the help of numerous knowledge keepers and Indigenous elders in the development of the game. Anishinaabe elder and grandmother Chickadee Richard says the game is a chance to show everyone what Anishinaabe culture is about.
We have a different understanding amongst each other and our relationship to the land and all of the environments that surround us. We're an oral people, so our history comes also from our ancestors, but it also comes from the land and the ceremonies. And I feel it's important to let everyone know that we're still here, we're still intact, we're still practicing our ways, our ancient ways.
Michelik says the school division hopes to have 5 other worlds for each Indigenous peoples in Manitoba.
In the very near future, we plan to build 5 additional Minecraft worlds that will bring to life the 4 remaining First Nations that our land acknowledgement reminds us called Manitoba home long before Europeans arrived, and the Métis Nation that blossomed out of the coming together of First Nation peoples and Europeans.
The world will officially launch on February 15th. Daryl Stranger, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
Time for us to take another break, but when we come back, a WHL team is moving to a First Nation. We'll tell you where and why after the break. Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. This is a lovely shot of grazing bison out enjoying winter in northern Alberta. Thanks to our viewer Leslie for sending in this photo. You can send us your photos too at share@aptn.ca, and your picture might be our next photo of the day. Let's take a look now at tomorrow's weather forecast. Off to the east coast, we've got -4 and snow for St. John's, -5 and sunshine for Halifax. Le Grand River, snow, -21, same with Inukjuak. Nain, -9 and cloud. Montreal, sunshine, -7. Val-d'Or, -20 and sunny skies. North Bay, sunshine, -14. Sunny too in Sault Ste. Marie, -12. Kapuskasing, -22 and sunshine, -21 and sunny in Timmins. Sunshine in northern Manitoba too, -26 for the Paw, -29 for God's Lake. -25 and sunshine for Winnipeg, -28 and sunny in Brandon. Sunny in Saskatoon too, or Saskatchewan too. Saskatoon, -29, -28 in Yorkton. -29 and snow for Buffalo Narrows, -21 for Uranium City and Stony Rapids, and snow up there. -20 or -26 and snow for Fort McMurray, -26 and sunshine for Peace River. -26 and sunny as well for Edmonton, -28 and sunshine for Lethbridge and Medicine Hat. Kamloops, sunny, -14. Bella Coola, -9 and sunny. Snow for Smithers, -17. Stanspit, -2 and some snow. -24 and sunshine for Beaver Creek. Old Crow, -32 and clear skies there. Lots of sun in Northwest Territories too, -19 for Yellowknife Trout Lake, -22. Paulatuk, clear skies, -15, -23 in Colville Lake. Mix of sun and cloud for Baker Lake, -22. Rather balmy at Chesterfield, -12. Igloolik, -20, clear skies. Resolute, -16 and clear there as well. To southern Alberta now, where a First Nation will be home to a Western Hockey League junior team this season. Due to pandemic protocols, the Calgary Hitmen are temporarily moving out of the Scotiabank Saddledome and into the next best arena, the Seven Chiefs Sports Complex on Tsuut'ina Nation. The games will start there when the season begins on February 20th. There will be no audience at the games, just players and staff and officials. Hitmen Vice President Mike Moore says the team is thankful for this opportunity.
Just want to thank the nation and Chief Whitney for what they've done for us to put this together. We couldn't have done it without them.
On today's In Focus, child welfare was back in the spotlight. We met a Winnipeg family who've got months of clean drug tests, a positive psych assessment, and mountains of support from advocates. And still, Winnipeg CFS will not give them their toddler and infant back. They shared their story with us. And we spoke with a new ally for parents like them. A 19-suite facility has opened up in Winnipeg to help parents who've got CFS targets on their back.
Opening day was September 1st, and thought, you know, we would start with 8 units and see how it goes so that we can really wrap around these families and get them to where they need to be to live independent and free of child welfare. But the response for Macoun when the doors opened was overwhelming. And it still is very overwhelming with the amount of families that are reaching out that are in a desperate situation to have their kids be returned to their care. And unfortunately, we're not big enough to support everybody, but there is definitely a need for more. And
You've got 17 families, you said?
Correct, living here. That, you know, they went through this whole process on their own. So they identified that this is something that they could use, and they reached out, they completed the intake process. I think another thing to emphasize here is that what sets us aside is we're the only program that works with the dads as well. You know, so families can move in as a couple, single dads can receive this support, and I think that's really important that, you know, people understand that we're here to support the whole family.
You had said to, like, what's the wait list like?
The wait list is long. We have numerous intakes every single day that we can't keep up with the amount of intakes that are coming in. We really try to prioritize people's situations, and if there's a situation where, you know, a mom or a dad are on the verge of losing their children unless they find somewhere that is fully supported to go to, like that would be a situation that we would prioritize. Like, we want to prevent as many separations as possible between kids and their parents.
What's the agency's reaction been to Macoun? Do you find them cooperative, wanting to help their clients, and, you know, parents and kids reunite? They're supportive of getting the kids out of foster and into Macoun with their parents?
For the most part, I would say that their response has been overwhelming, with some of the agencies wanting to, you know, have their families move into Macoun and receive the supports and the programming that we offer. Some, on the other hand, not so much.
All of our child welfare coverage that we've been doing on In Focus, you can find it at aptnnews.ca/podcasts. You can take a listen to them there. Well, that is your midweek news. I'm Melissa Ridgen. You have a great night.